Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Idahoan Show. Here in Idaho at vendor fairs and so forth, from time to time I've seen people selling, custom handmade knives. And the first time that I ever looked at the price tags on some of these knives, I was frankly shocked. They cost hundreds of dollars. It's not unusual to pay $500 to $1,000 for a handmade knife. Now, I am certainly not wealthy enough to consider spending that kind of money on a knife. But as a hypothetical scenario, it occurred to me to ask, if I was going to spend $500 or $1,000 on a knife, what would I want, or what would I expect to get for my money? Well, for starters, it probably goes without saying that I would expect to get a really good knife. Something that is sturdy and holds a really good edge and, fits my hand or, is comfortable to use and so on and so forth. I mean, if you're spending that kind of money on a knife, you better not be getting something that's flimsy or doesn't hold an edge. But I would venture to say that there's plenty of good functional knives on the market for under $100. And so a $500 knife also needs to have artistic elements to it that set it apart as a status symbol and not just a functional tool. That said, from my perspective at least, it's also vitally important that none of those artistic elements in any way compromise the practical usability of the knife. Because I've seen some handmade knives at vendor booths that, yeah, they're beautiful knives and they're probably made with good steel and so forth, but they're just not practical to carry or use. And so if anyone ever buys them, they're just going to sit in a display case somewhere. And to me, that seems like a waste. Anyway, this hypothetical question of considering the qualities that I would want or expect in a high-dollar luxury knife got me thinking, well, if I was going to make such a knife, how would I do it? Because while I don't have the financial resources to go out and buy a high-dollar handmade knife, I do potentially have the tools and skills to make one for myself. So that's what we're doing today.
I started with a piece of A2 tool steel. I found that A2 is relatively easy to selectively heat treat, so I can have the cutting edge extremely hard while leaving the spine of the knife relatively ductile. A2 is also known for producing a very fine grain structure, which allows the knife to take an exceptionally sharp edge. I used a fly cutter with the spindle of my milling machine at a slight angle to hollow out part of the steel, similar to hollow grinding. Then I finished grinding the shape of the blade by hand. After that, I used an oxyacetylene torch to selectively heat treat the cutting edge. I machined a pair of aluminum grips with an integral finger guard and textured them with the fly cutter. I also cut a piece of native Idahoan agate and machined a pocket inside the grips to hold it. Then I riveted the grips together using 1/4-inch outer diameter by 1/8-inch inner diameter stainless tubing. I poured some castable epoxy over the agate to give it a glossy finish and prevent it from rattling in the pocket of the handle. Then I finished smoothing and contouring the grips with a flap wheel on my angle grinder. I also used a polishing disc on my Dremel to give the blade a sort of jeweled texture. I made a leather sheath for the knife. And finally, I sharpened it to a razor edge. And here's the finished knife. I like how it turned out, and I have every reason to believe that it will serve me well, so now I carry a pseudo-expensive knife. It didn't cost me but maybe $25 worth of material to make it, but if I'd had to pay myself the going rate for skilled labor, then I'm sure the labor costs would have racked up hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Anyway, until next time, thank you for watching The Idahoan Show.